early life and family, a difficult beginning. Before he was the intimidating potions master, before he was the enigmatic spy, before he was a figure of both fear and profound pity, Severus Snape was just a boy. And his beginning, unlike the grand, whimsical starts of many other wizarding children, was anything but charmed. To understand the man, we must first peel back the layers of his earliest years, to the place where the seeds of his solitude and his complex nature were first sown. Severus Snape's childhood unfolded in a place called Spinner's End, a bleak, muggle-dominated street far removed from the idyllic, hidden wizarding communities that most magical children dreamt of. His home life was, to put it mildly, fraught. His father, Tobias Snape, was a muggle. His mother, Eileen Prince, was a witch. This made Severus a half-blood, a detail that would later become fraught with irony given his association with pureblood supremacists and his eventual deep immersion in the wizarding world. The stark contrast between his magical heritage and his mundane, impoverished surroundings set an early tone for a life lived on the fringes, never fully belonging to either world. The marriage between Tobias and Eileen appears to have been deeply unhappy, a constant source of tension and likely emotional distress for a young, impressionable Severus. We learn through glimpses and implications that Tobias was not a kind man. He was, in fact, abusive, a word that carries significant weight and explains much about the defensive walls Snape built around himself. This wasn't a home filled with warmth, laughter, or the easy comfort of family. Instead, it was likely marked by shouting, argument, and a profound sense of instability. Imagine growing up in an environment where the constant threat of conflict hangs in the air, where safety feels precarious, and genuine emotional support is virtually non-existent. This was Severus's grim reality, a stark contrast to the loving, nurturing homes we often see depicted for other prominent magical figures. His mother, Eileen Prince, a witch from a pureblood family, seemed to have been equally weighed down by her circumstances. While she possessed magical abilities, there's little to suggest she used them to create a better life for her son or protect him from his father's outbursts. Perhaps she was too overwhelmed, too defeated by her own choices and the consequences of marrying a muggle against the likely wishes of her family. Her family, the Princes, were a proud, ancient wizarding line, steeped in magical tradition and likely pure-blood ideology. Eileen had evidently severed ties, or perhaps been ostracized, for marrying a muggle. This isolation, both from her magical family and within her own unhappy marriage, would have only amplified the hardship within their small, troubled household at Spinner's End. Severus would have witnessed his mother's misery, perhaps even internalizing her shame or resignation, further contributing to his own feelings of being an outcast. This dysfunctional upbringing forged the very foundation of Snape's personality. He wasn't raised with affection, encouragement, or the gentle guidance that helps a child develop a healthy sense of self-worth. Instead, he learned to be self-reliant out of necessity, fiercely guarded as a defense mechanism, and perhaps a little bit bitter at the hand he'd been dealt. He developed a deep-seated insecurity, a yearning for acceptance he rarely found, and a defensive cynicism that became his most prominent shield against a world that seemed to offer him little kindness. His early experiences taught him that the world was a harsh, unforgiving place, and that trusting others was a risky endeavor, often leading to pain or disappointment. This formative period cultivated a sharp intellect, born of observation and a keen awareness of threats, traits that would serve him well later in his life, albeit in complicated ways. It was in this grim setting that Severus's own magical abilities would have first manifested. Imagine the sudden, inexplicable occurrences that would have surely startled his muggle father and perhaps brought a fleeting, complex expression to his witch mother's face, a mix of recognition, perhaps fear, and certainly a reminder of the world she had left behind. These early bursts of uncontrolled magic, raw and perhaps even frightening in their intensity, would have further set him apart, making him even more of an outsider in his own home and the immediate muggle neighborhood. While other wizarding children might have been celebrated for their first magical displays, for Severus, it might have been another source of tension, another reason to feel different, a power without guidance or safe expression. These uncontrolled magical outbursts occurring within a volatile home would have underscored his unique, isolated position. So, Before Hogwarts, before the dark arts, before the defining friendships and rivalries that would shape his teenage years, there was just Severus, a lonely, unloved child growing up in a house filled with discord and neglect. This difficult beginning didn't just shape his character, it became the very lens through which he would view the world. A world he would forever navigate with a mixture of resentment, longing, and a fiercely guarded heart. It's a crucial understanding because it sets the stage for everything that follows in his profoundly complex life. His early environment impressed upon him a profound sense of isolation and a need for self-preservation, which profoundly impacted his relationships and choices for decades to come. The first encounter, Lily Evans. From the bleak, oppressive confines of Spinner's End, a glimmer of light, vibrant and unexpected, pierced through Severus Snape's shadowed existence. This illumination came in the form of a girl, a mere child just like him, but possessing a quality so utterly antithetical to his dreary world that she must have seemed like a creature from a different plane entirely. This was Lily Evans, and her presence became the singular, defining relationship of his formative years, the crucible in which his deepest affections and most profound regrets would be forged. Their initial meeting, likely accidental, perhaps in a park or on the mundane streets of their shared Muggle neighborhood, was nothing short of pivotal. Severus, a solitary and observant boy, would have immediately noticed something remarkable about Lily. While he himself was discreetly experiencing uncontrolled bursts of accidental magic, struggling to comprehend the strange occurrences around him, Lily was experiencing them too, but with a startling difference. Her magic wasn't just happening, it was manifesting with a joy, a naturalness, an almost effervescent quality that starkly contrasted with Severus's own often frightening or frustrating experiences. He saw her changing the color of flower petals, making objects move, her emerald green eyes alight with wonder and curiosity rather than apprehension. For Severus, who had only ever known magic as a source of tension or a private, bewildering phenomenon, Lily was a revelation. She was living proof that magic could be beautiful, effortless, even joyful. It was a shared secret, a fundamental connection to a world neither of them fully understood yet, but one that resonated with the deepest parts of their beings. In Lily, Severus found not just a peer, but a mirror reflecting back a part of himself, the magical part, but doing so with a vibrancy he lacked. She was curious, unafraid, and open, qualities that must have deeply fascinated the guarded and withdrawn boy. Their budding friendship, unlike any other Severus had likely ever known, developed amidst the backdrop of their Muggle surroundings. He, with his burgeoning understanding of the wizarding world gleaned from his mother's magical heritage, took on the role of the knowledgeable guide. He explained to Lily what she was, what they both were, a witch and a wizard. He told her about Hogwarts, about the different houses, about the power that coursed through their veins. For Lily, who had no magical lineage in her immediate family, and whose older sister Petunia was resolutely Muggle, Severus was her window into an extraordinary, secret world. He demystified her strange experiences, giving them context and promise. He offered her belonging. This role as her instructor, her sole link to the magic that now defined her, would have been immensely gratifying for Severus. It provided him with a sense of purpose, a rare feeling of being needed and valued. He was the one with the answers, the one who understood. This dynamic established a powerful bond, a connection built on shared wonder, and Severus's possessive desire to protect this newfound treasure. Lily, with her inherent kindness and lack of prejudice, saw past his unkempt appearance, his social awkwardness, and the shadow of his difficult home life. She saw the magic in him, and perhaps the lonely boy beneath the veneer. Their friendship, however, was not without its external pressures. Lily's sister, Petunia, was a constant resentful presence, a living embodiment of the Muggle world's inability to comprehend and often its fear of the magical. Petunia's growing jealousy and disdain for Lily's abilities, and by extension for Severus who represented this otherness, created an early rift, a preview of the divisions that would plague Lily's life. Petunia's derision of Severus and his peculiarities would only have solidified his protectiveness over Lily, and his deepening resentment towards Muggles who couldn't appreciate the marvels he knew. As the years ticked by and their 11th birthdays approached, the anticipation of Hogwarts would have reached fever pitch. Their shared dream of escaping their mundane, often unhappy lives for a world where they truly belonged, a world of magic, would have cemented their bond further. The letters from Hogwarts, arriving by owl post, were not just invitations to a school, they were tickets to a shared destiny, a confirmation of their unique connection. Severus, who had longed for this escape, must have felt a profound sense of hope, a belief that with Lily by his side, the future held something truly remarkable, something that would finally erase the pain of his difficult beginning. This was the pinnacle of their pure, innocent connection, before the complexities of school, houses, and unfortunate choices would begin to chip away at what they shared. Lily Evans was not just his first friend. She was his first and perhaps only anchor to genuine human connection, a beacon of light in a life otherwise shrouded in gloom. Hogwarts sorting, Slytherin bound. The journey to Hogwarts, the very train ride itself, must have been a crucible of emotions for Severus Snape and Lily Evans. They were finally escaping Spinner's End, leaving behind the gloom and the parental discord for a world of limitless magical possibility. For Severus, this was more than just a school. It was the promised land, the place where his true self, the magical self, would finally be understood and embraced. He envisioned a future alongside Lily, a seamless continuation of their unique bond, now within the very heart of the wizarding world. However, even before the Sorting Hat touched their heads, the first subtle cracks in their seemingly unbreakable bond began to appear. The Hogwarts Express, bustling with excited, boisterous children, exposed the social chasm between them. Lily, with her innate warmth and openness, effortlessly gravitated towards others, forming new connections with ease. Her outgoing nature allowed her to integrate quickly, while Severus, ever the solitary and guarded observer, found himself once again on the periphery. He likely clung to Lily, finding comfort in her presence amidst the overwhelming novelty, but even her companionship couldn't entirely shield him from the feeling of being an outsider among his peers. This early social dynamic was further complicated by the arrival of James Potter and Sirius Black. These two boys, radiating confidence, privilege, and an almost effortless popularity, represented everything Severus was not and everything he instinctively resented. Their immediate, boisterous camaraderie contrasted sharply with Severus's quiet, intense loyalty to Lily, and their playful mockery, particularly directed at him, immediately sparked a deep-seated antagonism. Severus's attempts to guide Lily to share his knowledge of the wizarding world with her were likely met with derision from James and Sirius, perhaps even making Lily uncomfortable with his intensity. The seeds of rivalry, envy, and a profound sense of injustice were firmly planted even before they set foot in the Great Hall. Then came the sorting, the moment every first year both anticipated and dreaded. For Severus, the outcome felt inevitable, almost predetermined by the very essence of his being and the history of his magical family. His mother, Eileen Prince, hailed from a long line of Slytherins. His dark, brooding nature, his cunning intellect, his ambition, and his fiercely guarded self all aligned with the traits revered by Salazar Slytherin. He walked to the stool, perhaps with a grim sense of destiny, and as the hat touched his head, the pronouncement was swift and decisive. Slytherin. The roar of the Slytherin table, a mix of appreciation and self-satisfaction, must have been a powerful, if fleeting, moment of belonging for Severus. He had a house, a place where he theoretically fit. He looked towards Lily, perhaps expecting a shared smile of understanding, a nod of recognition for their intertwined magical fate. But her fate was different. When Lily Evans stepped forward, her bright, open demeanor, her unwavering loyalty to her friends, her courage in standing up for what was right, even for Severus, spoke of another house entirely. The Sorting Hat hesitated, perhaps sensing her innate power and pure heart, and then the unmistakable cry echoed through the great hall. Gryffindor! This moment was a seismic shift, a fault line cracking through the very foundation of their friendship. Severus's world, which he had so meticulously built around the shared future with Lily, suddenly fractured. Gryffindor, the house of the brave, the daring, the chivalrous, and, critically, the house of James Potter and Sirius Black, the very boys who had already begun to mock him, the ones who embodied everything he detested, would now share a dormitory. classes, and an unbreakable bond with Lily. For Severus, being sorted into Slytherin was a confirmation of his identity, a place where he felt he belonged amongst those with similar dispositions. But for Lily to go to Gryffindor, the direct rival house, and more importantly, the house of his nascent enemies, felt like a betrayal, or at least a stark separation. The physical distance between the Slytherin and Gryffindor tables in the Great Hall symbolized the growing emotional chasm between them. He was now literally on the other side of the hall from the one person who truly mattered to him. This sorting wasn't just about house allegiance. It was about the splintering of a dream. Severus had always seen himself and Lily as a unit, a pair against the world. Now, the world had sorted them apart. The Gryffindor common room would become a vibrant, welcoming space for Lily, a place Severus could never enter. She would make new friends, bond with her housemates, and perhaps, inevitably, grow closer to the very people Severus already despised. His initial hope and excitement for Hogwarts were now tinged with a profound sense of loss and isolation, a chilling echo of the loneliness he had left behind at Spinner's End. The seeds of possessiveness, jealousy, and resentment towards James Potter, already sown on the train, were now watered and nurtured by the undeniable reality of the Sorting Hat's decision. This was the moment their paths, once perfectly aligned, began to subtly diverge, initiating a painful trajectory that would define the rest of their story. School years, rivalries, and isolation. The hallowed halls of Hogwarts, a beacon of magic and learning, became for Severus Snape not the sanctuary he had dreamed of, but a stage for escalating torment and profound alienation. His sorting into Slytherin, while fitting for his temperament, placed him squarely on the opposing side of the Great Hall from Lily Evans, the one person who truly understood him. This physical distance rapidly became an emotional chasm, widened by the relentless antagonism of the Gryffindor boys, who would become his lifelong nemeses: James Potter, Sirius Black, Remus Lupin, and Peter Pettigrew, collectively known as the Marauders. From day one, the rivalry was palpable. Severus, with his unkempt appearance, his introverted nature, and his intense, often awkward demeanor, became an immediate target for the Marauders' brand of casual cruelty. James Potter, in particular, saw Snape as a legitimate rival, not just for academic standing or Quidditch glory, but crucially, for Lily's attention and affection. James's confidence, popularity, and innate charisma stood in stark contrast to Severus's insecurities, fueling a bitter envy in Snape that festered throughout their school years. The Marauders' pranks, initially perhaps just youthful mischief, often escalated into blatant bullying, targeting Severus with a viciousness that bordered on sadistic. These public humiliations, often involving powerful magic, stripped Severus of any dignity he might have hoped to cultivate, cementing his role as an outcast, even within the wizarding world he had so longed to join. While Severus endured these persecutions, his relationship with Lily continued to fray. The house divide placed them on opposite teams for house points, Quidditch, and general school allegiances. Lily, with her strong moral compass, found herself increasingly torn. While she continued to defend Severus against the Marauders' bullying, her patience with his own choices began to wear thin. Severus, in his desperation to hold on to her, often lashed out, his insecurity manifesting as possessiveness and a growing attraction to the dark magic he believed would grant him power and respect. He sought solace and belonging within his own house, finding kinship with fellow Slytherins who shared his disdain for Muggles and his fascination with the darker aspects of magic, figures like Mulciber and Avery. These friendships, however, only served to further alienate him from Lily, whose inherent goodness and rejection of such ideologies put her at odds with Severus's emerging peer group. The infamous Snape's worst memory incident perfectly encapsulates the deteriorating dynamic. Publicly humiliated by James Potter, hung upside down, Severus's raw vulnerability was exposed for all to see. Lily, witnessing the torment, bravely intervened, defending him. But in his agony and shame, Severus lashed out at the only person offering him comfort, calling Lily a mudblood, a heinous slur for Muggle-born witches and wizards. This single word, uttered in a moment of extreme duress and self-loathing, became the irreversible turning point. It was a betrayal of their bond, a fundamental assault on Lily's identity, and an unforgivable demonstration of the dark path Severus was dangerously close to fully embracing. Despite his immediate, desperate pleas for forgiveness, the word shattered something irreparable between them. Lily, heartbroken and disgusted, could not overlook the venom in his outburst nor the company he kept. His isolation deepened. Within Slytherin, he was perhaps understood, but never truly cherished. His intelligence, particularly in potions and the dark arts, earned him respect from some, but his brooding nature and the ongoing feuds kept him from forming genuine, supportive bonds. He poured himself into his studies, particularly the forbidden dark arts, seeing mastery as a pathway to power and a defense against those who tormented him. This academic prowess, while admirable, only intensified his detachment from the social fabric of the school. He spent his years stewing in resentment, his initial hope for a magical haven replaced by a grim determination to survive, and eventually, perhaps, retaliate. The constant bullying from the Marauders, particularly James Potter, fueled an intense personal hatred in Severus that would define much of his adult life. He believed James was not only his tormentor, but also the man who stole Lily's affections, intertwining his personal misery with his academic rivalry. This deeply ingrained resentment, born from years of public humiliation and private pain, solidified his bitterness and contributed to his cold, cutting demeanor in adulthood. By the time their school years drew to a close, Severus Snape was a deeply embittered, solitary young man. His dream of a shared magical future with Lily had crumbled, replaced by a chasm of unforgivable words and divergent paths. He was a brilliant but isolated wizard, carrying the deep scars of his difficult childhood and the relentless torment of his school years. These experiences, marked by unending rivalry and profound isolation, primed him for the desperate choices he would make next, pushing him further into the shadows where he believed true power and belonging resided, far away from the light that Lily once represented. The fatal Flaw, joining the Death Eaters. The bitter crucible of Severus Snape's Hogwarts years, steeped in rivalry and profound isolation, forged a young man ripe for radicalization. With Lily Evans's friendship now irrevocably shattered by his own cruel words and choices, the protective anchor that once tethered him to a semblance of light was gone. He was adrift, desperate for belonging, for power and for validation that the wizarding world had thus far denied him. It was in this fertile ground of resentment and yearning that the seeds of his fatal flaw took root: his decision to join the Death Eaters. The wizarding world upon his graduation was a landscape dramatically different from the one he had entered. The First Wizarding War was escalating, casting a long, dark shadow over Britain. Lord Voldemort, with his seductive promises of pure-blood supremacy and a radical restructuring of society, was consolidating power. His message, however vile, resonated deeply with those who felt marginalized, those who craved power, and those who held grievances against the established order. For Severus, who had always felt like an outsider, whose half-blood status belied his internal disdain for Muggles and Muggleborns, a disdain perhaps cultivated to fit in with his Slytherin peers, Voldemort's ideology offered a twisted sense of purpose and belonging. Snape's motivations for becoming a Death Eater were complex, a chilling cocktail of personal bitterness and a misguided pursuit of power. He wasn't necessarily driven by a fervent ideological belief in pure-blood cleansing in the same way some Death Eaters might have been. Instead, his initial draw was likely rooted in a desire for acceptance, for a group where his intelligence, particularly in the dark arts, would be not just acknowledged, but celebrated. The Death Eaters offered a brotherhood, albeit a sinister one, where his talents would be valued, and where he could finally belong to something powerful, something that commanded fear and respect, rather than being the recipient of derision. There was also undoubtedly an element of revenge. The Marauders, particularly James Potter, represented the privileged, popular, and ultimately triumphant side of the wizarding world that had consistently scorned him. Joining Voldemort, gaining power within a formidable organization, was a way to exert control, to finally stand above those who had tormented him. It was a misguided attempt to reclaim agency, In a life where he had often felt powerless and humiliated, the dark arts, which he had obsessively studied during his school years, were not just academic pursuits. They were tools for dominance, for wielding power, and for ensuring that no one could ever make him feel small or vulnerable again. The precise moment he took the dark mark and swore fealty to Voldemort remains shrouded in the terrifying ritual of initiation. This act, however, was no trivial commitment. It was a complete surrender of his will to the Dark Lord, an indelible mark of allegiance that would bind him for life. He would have participated in the Death Eaters' activities, attending their dark gatherings, contributing his formidable intellect to their cause, and undoubtedly witnessing or even participating in acts of terror and violence. His specialized knowledge of potions and the dark arts would have made him a valuable asset to Voldemort, earning him a place in the inner circle, however peripheral. This brief period of active service solidified his reputation as a committed follower of the Dark Lord. The fatal flaw in this decision was not just moral but deeply ironic. In seeking power and acceptance through the dark arts and Voldemort's regime, Snape inadvertently tied himself to the very force that would eventually target the one person he still, despite everything, desperately loved. His pursuit of belonging through darkness led him down a path that would directly threaten Lily Evans. He believed he was gaining strength, but he was, in fact, building the chains of his own tragedy. This period as an active Death Eater represents the nadir of Snape's morality. He made a conscious choice to align himself with pure evil, driven by a cocktail of personal pain, ambition, and a desperate search for belonging. This decision, born from his enduring insecurities and the corrosive effects of his school-age torment, would forever brand him, marking him as one of Voldemort's followers even after his eventual defection. It was a choice that would haunt him for the rest of his life, demanding an impossible penance and setting the stage for the unimaginable sacrifices he would later be forced to make. The lure of power, the promise of respect, and the dark satisfaction of revenge were too strong for the isolated, embittered young man to resist, solidifying his most catastrophic, life-altering mistake. The prophecy and the plea, a change of heart. The fatal flaw of joining the Death Eaters, born from Severus Snape's deep-seated resentments and desperate search for belonging, brought him into Voldemort's inner circle, however briefly. It was within this dark and dangerous proximity to the Dark Lord that Snape, by sheer horrifying chance, stumbled upon the catalyst that would shatter his misguided loyalties and spark the most profound, agonizing change of heart imaginable. This pivotal moment centered on a prophecy, overheard in the Hogshead Inn, that would forever alter the course of his life and the destiny of the wizarding world. The prophecy, uttered by Sybil Trelawney to Albus Dumbledore, spoke of the one with the power to vanquish the Dark Lord being born as the seventh month dies. Critically, it also stated that the Dark Lord will mark him as his equal, but he will have power the Dark Lord knows not. Snape, ever the diligent servant, overheard only the initial part of the prophecy and, eager to curry favor, immediately relayed this crucial yet incomplete information to Lord Voldemort. He believed he was offering his master a pathway to ultimate victory, unaware of the devastating consequences his partial report would unleash. Voldemort, upon hearing this fragment, fixated on two potential targets, the children of either the Longbottoms or the Potters. Both families had defied him multiple times, and both had infants born at the end of July. In a decision that would prove to be his greatest strategic error and Snape's most horrifying realization, Voldemort chose the Potters. He chose to target Lily Evans. The moment Snape understood the full implications of his intelligence, that the Dark Lord intended to murder Lily and her family, his world, built precariously on bitterness and ambition, utterly collapsed. The cold, calculated allegiance to Voldemort, the fleeting satisfaction of being part of a powerful order, evaporated in an instant, replaced by an overwhelming tide of pure, unadulterated terror and remorse. His love for Lily, dormant yet fiercely burning beneath layers of resentment and pride, ignited into a consuming inferno. All the years of torment, all the misguided choices, all the dark power he had sought, none of it mattered if Lily, his Lily, was in mortal danger. In an act of desperate, unprecedented courage and complete self-abasement, Snape immediately fled to Albus Dumbledore. This journey itself would have been agonizing, a walk through the very deepest pits of his shame and terror. He, a Death Eater, one of Voldemort's trusted lieutenants, was seeking help from the very man who embodied everything the Dark Lord despised. He confessed his dreadful error, begging Dumbledore to protect Lily. His plea was not for her husband James, nor for their son Harry. It was solely for Lily. He explicitly asked Dumbledore to hide them all, but his singular focus, his raw, unadulterated anguish, was for her life. Dumbledore, with his shrewd understanding of human nature and his uncanny ability to see beyond surface appearances, recognized the genuine, agonizing depth of Snape's love. He saw past the dark mark, past the allegiance to Voldemort, and recognized the desperate plea of a man whose fatal flaw had led him to the brink of losing the only person he had ever truly cared for. Dumbledore agreed to help, but on one profound condition: that Snape would become his spy, turning his back on Voldemort and serving the Order of the Phoenix. This was the pivotal moment of Snape's redemption, a complete reorientation of his life's purpose. His change of heart was not born of abstract morality or a sudden embrace of the light, but of an intensely personal, all-consuming love for Lily. It was a love so powerful it forced him to confront the monstrous consequences of his choices and to betray the most feared wizard of all time. He agreed to Dumbledore's terms, knowing the immense danger, the perpetual deceit, and the unbearable isolation that such a role would entail. Despite Dumbledore's efforts and Snape's desperate warning, tragedy struck. Voldemort, unable to penetrate the protections around the Potter home, murdered James and Lily, leaving baby Harry an orphan. The news of Lily's death, despite his desperate intervention, utterly devastated Snape. His initial plea to Dumbledore had been for Lily's life alone, a testament to his narrow, self-focused love. Dumbledore, ever the manipulator of the greater good, pointed out that James Potter's life was part of the package, and cruelly, perhaps, reminded Snape of the price of his hatred. Lily's sacrifice, however, created a unique magical protection for Harry, turning Voldemort's own curse back upon him. After Lily's death, Snape returned to Dumbledore heartbroken and utterly broken. His initial motivation for becoming a spy had been to save Lily. With her gone, his purpose could have evaporated, sending him spiraling back into darkness or despair. But Dumbledore, recognizing the enduring depth of his love, skillfully guided him. He appealed to Snape's profound remorse and offered him a new, agonizing mission: to protect Lily's son, Harry. This was the ultimate penance, an eternal act of atonement for his part in her death, a constant reminder of his greatest failure. The prophecy in the Plea sequence marks Snape's transformation from a misguided, bitter follower of evil into a complex, tragic hero. His change of heart was not flawless, not born of pure altruism, but rooted in a love so fierce and unyielding that it compelled him to defy the Dark Lord and embark on a lifetime of dangerous, thankless servitude. It was the moment the fatal flaw that led him to darkness became the catalyst for his extraordinary, albeit agonizing, redemption. From this point forward, Severus Snape's life would be an unending act of penance, a silent, solitary war fought for the memory of the woman he loved. Double Agent, the spy for Dumbledore. Lily Evans's death, a direct and devastating consequence of Severus Snape's choices and his partial relaying of the prophecy, irrevocably shattered him. The raw, guttural agony he experienced in the aftermath cemented his betrayal of Voldemort, transforming a desperate plea for Lily's life into an agonizing, lifelong mission. With Lily gone, Dumbledore, ever the master strategist and astute judge of character, presented Snape with a new, infinitely more harrowing purpose: to become a double agent, infiltrating the very heart of the Death Eaters to serve the Order of the Phoenix. This was the ultimate penance, an unending act of self-flagellation, and a testament to a love that transcended even death. The role of a double agent is one of profound psychological torture. Snape had to maintain an impeccable facade of loyalty to Lord Voldemort, even after the Dark Lord's temporary defeat at Godric's Hollow. This meant living a lie every single day, inhabiting the very persona he now despised. He had to perform acts, utter words, and display attitudes that were abhorrent to his true, albeit deeply hidden, allegiance. Every interaction was a tightrope walk over an abyss of discovery and agonizing death. One false move, one flicker of genuine emotion in the wrong place, and his mission and his life would be over. His position as a potions master at Hogwarts, secured by Dumbledore, provided the perfect cover. It allowed him to remain within the wizarding world's most vital institution, close to Dumbledore and, crucially, close to Harry Potter, the living embodiment of Lily's sacrifice. Teaching at Hogwarts, however, required him to interact with students, many of whom were the children of those he served or fought against. His cold, cutting demeanor, his favoritism towards Slytherins, and his overt disdain for Gryffindors, especially Harry, were all meticulously crafted elements of his disguise. Every sneer, every sarcastic remark, every point deducted from Gryffindor was a performance, a deliberate act to reinforce his public image as the unpleasant, biased Slytherin head of house, loyal only to his dark past. The information Snape provided to Dumbledore was invaluable. He fed the Order details of Voldemort's plans, the movements of his Death Eaters, and insights into the Dark Lord's strategies and weaknesses. This intelligence was often the only thing standing between the Order and disaster, saving countless lives. He operated in the shadows, delivering cryptic messages, manipulating events from behind the scenes, and enduring a constant state of paranoia. He was privy to unspeakable horrors committed by the Death Eaters, yet had to feign approval, or at least indifference, to maintain his cover. This level of deception required immense mental fortitude and an unparalleled ability to compartmentalize his emotions and his true beliefs. His relationship with Dumbledore was complex, built on a foundation of profound trust, yet shrouded in secrecy and manipulation. Dumbledore was the only person who knew Snape's true allegiance, the only one who understood the depth of his sacrifice. This shared secret forged an unbreakable, if often terse, bond between them. Snape trusted Dumbledore implicitly, even when Dumbledore's plans seemed unfathomable or cruel. He obeyed Dumbledore's every command, knowing that his old headmaster held the key to his purpose and ultimately his only path to atonement. Dumbledore, in turn, placed an extraordinary, unwavering faith in Snape, a faith that would define the entire trajectory of the war. The years as a spy were marked by an unbearable burden of guilt and grief. Every time he looked at Harry Potter, he saw Lily's eyes, a constant, painful reminder of his role in her death. His harsh treatment of Harry, while serving as part of his cover, was also a manifestation of his internal turmoil, a projection of his own self-loathing, and a desperate attempt to distance himself from the pain Lily's son evoked. He couldn't openly express affection or care without jeopardizing his mission, forcing him to embody the very antagonist role that Harry and the wizarding public believed him to be. Snape's life as a double agent was one of utter solitude. He had no confidants, no true friends, no one with whom he could genuinely share the crushing weight of his secret. He was loathed by the good side, feared by the dark, and understood by virtually no one. This isolation, a continuation of the loneliness of his childhood, became his permanent state, a self-imposed purgatory for the sake of a love lost. He was a man perpetually living a lie, enduring unimaginable psychological strain for a cause that was not his own, but for the memory of the woman who was. This was the ultimate sacrifice, a lifetime dedicated to atonement, played out in the unforgiving shadows of war. A silent hero performing the dirtiest, most dangerous work for the faint hope of a brighter future that he himself would never get to see. Potions Master and Head of Slytherin, a Mask of Malice. Upon Voldemort's initial defeat at the hands of infant Harry Potter, the wizarding world rejoiced, believing the nightmare was over. For Severus Snape, however, the peace brought only a deeper, more profound agony. Lily was gone, and his life's new crushing purpose was to protect the boy whose existence was a constant, painful reminder of his greatest loss and his gravest mistake. His role as a double agent demanded an impenetrable disguise, and his dual positions at Hogwarts, Potions Master and Head of Slytherin House, provided the perfect and bitterly ironic stage for his lifelong performance. Dumbledore, with his unparalleled strategic foresight, recognized Snape's immense magical talent and unique position. Appointing him Potions Master not only utilized Snape's undeniable genius for the subject, but also kept him within the protective confines of Hogwarts, close to the information Dumbledore needed and, crucially, close to Harry Potter. Yet, Snape wore this role like a second skin of loathing. His classroom was less a place of learning and more a crucible of intimidation, fear, and thinly veiled contempt. His sharp tongue, his sarcastic remarks, and his ruthless grading policies were legendary, creating an atmosphere so oppressive that few students dared to truly excel under his tutelage. He delighted in making students squirm, in highlighting their perceived inaptitude, projecting his own inner misery and bitterness onto those in his charge. This pervasive nastiness wasn't just a byproduct of his personality. It was a deliberate, meticulously crafted element of his cover. To appear as a loyal, unpleasant former Death Eater, Snape had to be consistently and convincingly unpleasant. His disdain for most students, particularly Gryffindors, served to cement his image as a prejudiced, dark wizard, a character that few would ever suspect of profound loyalty to Dumbledore or deep hidden heroism. The harshness was a shield protecting his true intentions from prying eyes, both within the student body and, more importantly, from any lingering Death Eater sympathizers or even the watchful gaze of the Ministry. His favoritism towards Slytherin House was equally deliberate. As head of Slytherin, Snape cultivated an aura of strict, unyielding support for his own students, often at the expense of other houses, especially Gryffindor. He awarded points liberally to Slytherin for the most minor achievements and deducted them ruthlessly from others for perceived infractions. This bias, while infuriating to non-Slytherins, reinforced his perceived alignment with pureblood ideology and Slytherin values, further solidifying his credibility as a man of the dark side. It fostered an environment where his Slytherin students, many from Death Eater families, saw him as one of their own, making him privy to their families' conversations and beliefs, invaluable intelligence for Dumbledore. His treatment of Harry Potter was arguably the most painful and complex aspect of his performance. Harry, with Lily's eyes and James's messy hair, was a constant living paradox for Snape. He saw the embodiment of his lost love and the spitting image of his hated rival. His cruelty towards Harry wasn't solely a performance, it was also a reflection of his profound internal torment. He loathed James Potter, and much of his animosity towards Harry was a projection of that historical hatred. Yet, beneath the layers of sneering sarcasm and unjust attentions, Snape was also subtly guiding Harry, protecting him and observing him, as Dumbledore commanded. He taught Harry occlumency, tried to warn him through veiled comments, and even sometimes subtly intervened in dangerous situations. Every cutting remark was a battle waged between his duty to Dumbledore and his deep-seated bitterness. The mask of Malice served to protect Harry by keeping Voldemort's suspicions at bay, ensuring no one would ever suspect the true depth of Snape's care for Lily's son. These years as Potions Master and head of Slytherin were an agonizing tightrope walk for Snape. He lived a double life, perpetually cloaked in a mask of malice and disdain. Every public interaction was a carefully calibrated act designed to deflect suspicion and maintain his cover. He forfeited any chance of public appreciation, accepting the scorn and hatred of students and colleagues alike. This self-imposed purgatory, marked by daily acts of perceived villainy, was the price he willingly paid for his atonement, a testament to the unwavering, agonizing power of his love for Lily, driving him to endure years of isolation and public opprobrium, all while performing the most dangerous, thankless mission imaginable, the Unbreakable Vow and Dumbledore's death, the ultimate sacrifice. The culmination of Severus Snape's agonizing life as a double agent came with a final, horrific command from Albus Dumbledore, a task so morally complex and personally devastating that it would solidify Snape's ultimate sacrifice in the eyes of the few who knew the truth, and irrevocably brand him a traitor in the eyes of the wizarding world. This pivotal moment centered on the Unbreakable Vow and the staged death of Albus Dumbledore himself. The sequence of events was set in motion by Dumbledore's own failing health. Cursed by Marvolo Gaunt's ring, a Horcrux, Dumbledore was dying. He knew his time was limited, and he needed to orchestrate his end in a way that would serve the greater good, protect Snape's cover, and provide a clear path for Harry Potter to eventually defeat Voldemort. He approached Snape with the harrowing proposition: Snape must be the one to kill him. This was not a random choice. It was a testament to Dumbledore's absolute trust in Snape's loyalty, even as he asked him to commit an act of pure evil in the eyes of the world. Complicating this already dreadful request was the unbreakable vow. Earlier, Narcissa Malfoy, desperate to protect her son Draco from Voldemort's terrifying command to kill Dumbledore, sought out Snape. In a desperate plea, she implored him to help Draco, to watch over him, and to complete the task if Draco failed. Snape, recognizing the impossible position Draco was in, and perhaps feeling a twisted sense of obligation due to his past associations, made an unbreakable vow to Narcissa. He vowed to protect Draco in his mission, and, if necessary, to kill Dumbledore himself. This vow, binding and magically enforced, sealed his fate even further, turning a grim request from Dumbledore into an unavoidable, life or math, magical imperative. This act, while seemingly aligning him further with the Death Eaters, was, in fact, a crucial part of Dumbledore's larger plan. Dumbledore understood that Draco would fail. The boy lacked the true killer instinct. He needed a reliable, trusted agent to complete the act, one who was already deeply embedded within Voldemort's ranks. By taking the vow, Snape secured his position as Voldemort's most trusted lieutenant, ensuring he would be perfectly placed for the final stages of the war. It cemented his image as utterly ruthless and loyal to the Dark Lord, removing any lingering doubt Voldemort might have held, especially after Snape's initial defection. The tragic climax arrived on the Astronomy Tower. Draco Malfoy, terrified and trembling, had cornered Dumbledore but could not bring himself to deliver the final blow. The Death Eaters, including Bellatrix Lestrange, arrived, urging Draco to finish the job. It was at this critical juncture that Snape appeared. With cold, unwavering resolve, and ignoring Dumbledore's silent plea for him to show mercy, a plea which Dumbledore himself later explained was a request for Snape to commit the act quickly and without hesitation, Snape raised his wand and uttered the killing curse, Avada Kedavra. The flash of green light, the silent fall of Albus Dumbledore from the tower, echoed throughout the wizarding world, sending shockwaves of despair and disbelief. To everyone present, and to the wider magical community, Severus Snape was unequivocally Dumbledore's murderer, the ultimate traitor. He had betrayed the greatest wizard of their age, the leader of the light, in the most heinous way possible. He fled with the Death Eaters, his reputation irrevocably stained, his name forever synonymous with treachery. This act was the ultimate sacrifice. Snape willingly, agonizingly, destroyed his own reputation, condemned himself to universal hatred, and committed an act he likely found abhorrent, all to fulfill Dumbledore's dying wish, and to secure his position as the indispensable spy for the Order. He allowed himself to be branded a monster, accepting the burden of being hated by the very people he was secretly fighting to save. There was no glory in this sacrifice, no recognition, only the lonely, unbearable weight of a necessary evil. The unbreakable vow in Dumbledore's death solidified Snape's role as the darkest of heroes. He performed the act that Voldemort desired, ensuring his continued trust, and simultaneously fulfilled Dumbledore's final, crucial command. This moment encapsulated the core of Snape's character, a man driven by a singular, enduring love, willing to endure unimaginable personal cost, and to embrace the role of villain for the greater good, even if it meant his own eternal damnation in the eyes of the world. It was the absolute pinnacle of his double life, sealing his tragic destiny. Headmaster of Hogwarts under Voldemort's reign. The immediate aftermath of Albus Dumbledore's death saw Severus Snape flee Hogwarts alongside the Death Eaters, the indelible image of Dumbledore falling from the Astronomy Tower forever branding him as the ultimate traitor. This act, meticulously planned and executed, served its primary purpose: to fully cement Snape's position as Voldemort's most trusted and loyal servant. With Dumbledore gone and the Ministry of Magic swiftly falling under the Dark Lord's insidious influence, Snape's calculated betrayal propelled him into his most dangerous and public role as a double agent, Headmaster of Hogwarts under Voldemort's brutal regime. His appointment, orchestrated by Voldemort himself, was the ultimate validation of Snape's perceived loyalty. Voldemort believed he had placed his own man at the helm of the wizarding world's most vital institution, a move designed to stamp out dissent, indoctrinate the youth, and control access to potential resistance. To the public, Snape was the dark, unfeeling headmaster, a symbol of Voldemort's absolute power and the complete subjugation of Hogwarts. He moved into Dumbledore's office, a place that must have carried an immense, painful irony for him, surrounded by the very artifacts of the man he had murdered. Snape's tenure as headmaster was a masterclass in covert resistance and strategic protection. While he outwardly enforced Voldemort's decrees and allowed the Death Eaters Alecto and Amicus Carrow to implement their cruel curricula, teaching the dark arts with a heavy hand and Muggle studies as propaganda, his true objective was to subtly shield the students and facilitate the resistance from within. He allowed the Carrows to brutalize students who defied them, seemingly turning a blind eye, thereby preserving his cover. Yet, behind the scenes, his actions were carefully calculated to minimize harm and ensure the survival of key figures in the spirit of defiance. He did not directly stop the Carrows, as that would immediately expose him. Instead, he acted as a silent guardian, providing just enough resistance without compromising his deep cover. He tolerated the formation of Dumbledore's army, Mark II, led by Neville Longbottom, Luna Lovegood, and Ginny Weasley, allowing them to gather in the Room of Requirement. He knew of their activities, yet he never truly shut them down, never reported them directly to Voldemort, instead providing just enough proof of their existence to the Carrows to keep them occupied and away from his true purpose. He skillfully navigated the treacherous political landscape, giving the appearance of cooperation while subtly undermining the Dark Lord's goals. One of his crucial functions was to protect Harry Potter from afar. He knew Harry would eventually return to Hogwarts, and his presence as headmaster allowed him to anticipate Harry's moves and ensure his safety, even as he appeared to hunt him down. He ensured that the students who might aid Harry, or those who possessed information vital to the Order, were not truly silenced or eliminated. His stern discipline and the climate of fear he cultivated ironically also served to protect the students, keeping them in line just enough to avoid the absolute wrath of the Death Eaters. His actions during this period were deeply misunderstood by almost everyone, including Harry and his allies. To them, Snape was the embodiment of Hogwarts' darkest hour, the ruthless enforcer of Voldemort's will. They saw his cold eyes, his sneering contempt, and his willingness to allow the Carrows to inflict punishments, further solidifying their conviction that he was a villain. This universal hatred, however, was precisely what made his cover so impenetrable. No one, not even Voldemort, truly suspected his allegiance to Dumbledore because his performance was so utterly convincing, so devoid of any outward sign of empathy or compassion. This period was perhaps the loneliest for Snape. He was surrounded by the forces of evil, constantly under suspicion from Voldemort's followers, and simultaneously reviled by the students and former colleagues he was secretly protecting. He could trust no one, confide in no one. Every decision was a gamble, every interaction a performance that could lead to his unmasking and agonizing death. He maintained his mask of malice with absolute precision, even as the walls of Hogwarts and his own soul crumbled around him. Snape's time as headmaster under Voldemort's reign represents the pinnacle of his double-agent operation. He walked a tightrope over the abyss, enduring the hatred of the very people he fought for, all while providing invaluable covert assistance to the anti-Voldemort forces. His capacity for enduring personal vilification for a hidden greater good reached its zenith. He was the hated headmaster, the Death Eater in charge, but beneath the mask, he remained Dumbledore's man, fighting a silent, desperate war from within the heart of the enemy's stronghold, awaiting the moment he could deliver his final, crucial piece of intelligence. The revelation, memories, and true allegiance. The dramatic climax of the Second Wizarding War arrived with a deafening roar, plunging Hogwarts into chaos. Lord Voldemort, believing Severus Snape to be the true master of the Elder Wand, a power he desperately craved, summoned him to the Shrieking Shack. This was the end for Snape, the final brutal act of his double life. Voldemort, with a chilling lack of ceremony or gratitude for Snape's years of loyal service, ordered his serpent, Nagini, to deliver the fatal bite. As life drained from Snape, his eyes, those piercing dark eyes that had seen so much and revealed so little, fixed on Harry Potter, who had bravely followed them into the shack. In his dying moments, with his last vestiges of strength, Snape performed his final act of devotion to Dumbledore's cause and to Lily. He commanded Harry, "Take them," and from his eyes he shed a torrent of memories, a silvery stream of thoughts and emotions, which Harry instinctively collected into a vial with the help of Hermione. This simple, desperate act was the culmination of a lifetime of sacrifice, the ultimate unburdening of his deepest secrets. Harry, bewildered and heartbroken by the death of the man he hated, carried the vial to Dumbledore's pensieve. Immersing himself in Snape's memories, Harry was plunged into the truth, a truth so profound and unexpected that it rewrote everything he thought he knew about his potions master. What unfolded before him was not the story of a villain, but of a man consumed by an enduring, unconditional love, a love that defined his entire existence. The memories began with Snape's lonely childhood in Spinner's End, the early, tender moments of his friendship with Lily Evans, their shared discovery of magic, and his immediate, unshakable devotion to her. Harry witnessed the burgeoning rivalry with James Potter and Sirius Black, seeing Snape's torment from his own perspective. He saw Lily's unwavering defense of Snape, even as Snape's choices began to pull them apart. He relived the agonizing moment Snape called Lily a mudblood, an act of self-loathing born of humiliation that severed their friendship, a moment of profound regret Snape would carry forever. The memories then shifted to the terrifying moment Snape overheard the prophecy, the instant realization that it endangered Lily, and his desperate, frantic plea to Dumbledore to protect her. Harry saw Snape's raw anguish at Lily's death, understanding for the first time the true source of Snape's pain and the immense, irreversible guilt he carried. He witnessed Dumbledore's shrewd manipulation of Snape's grief, twisting his love for Lily into a lifelong mission to protect Harry, the very boy who shared Lily's eyes. Perhaps the most shocking revelation for Harry was the full, comprehensive scope of Snape's loyalty to Dumbledore. Memory after memory unfolded, revealing Snape's unwavering commitment as a double agent. His constant, perilous spying on Voldemort, risking discovery and agonizing death at every turn. His protection of Hogwarts students from the Carrows during Voldemort's reign as Headmaster, a nuanced and dangerous tightrope walk. His subtle guidance and interventions on Harry's behalf throughout the years, often disguised as cruel punishment or cutting remarks. The truth behind Dumbledore's death, the unbreakable vow, Dumbledore's failing health, and the agonizing decision for Snape to mercy kill him to preserve his cover and ensure the plan's success. Harry saw Dumbledore instruct Snape, calmly and clearly, to kill him, a revelation that shattered the widely accepted narrative of Snape's betrayal. The ultimate revelation was Snape's Patronus. For years, Harry had only known his mother's Patronus, a silver doe. Now he witnessed Snape conjuring the exact same Patronus, a powerful, undeniable symbol of his enduring love for Lily, a love that had never faded, not for a single moment since childhood. It was proof, irrefutable and heartbreaking, of his true allegiance. He had always been Lily's man, and by extension Dumbledore's man, driven by a love that transcended hatred, pride, and even death. This deluge of memories transformed Snape from a hated villain into a tragic hero. Harry finally understood the immense burden Snape had carried, the constant performance, the profound isolation, the years of self-sacrifice without recognition or gratitude. He saw the always, Snape's whispered confirmation of his unending love for Lily, as the driving force behind every agonizing choice. The revelation of Snape's true allegiance was not just a plot twist. It was a profound emotional core of the entire saga, reframing the very nature of bravery, loyalty, and redemption. It was the moment the mask of Malice finally fell, revealing the most complex, agonizingly human heart beneath. The Last Stand, Nagini's Attack. The Battle of Hogwarts raged, a cataclysmic clash of light and darkness that tore through the ancient castle walls. Amidst the chaos and carnage, Severus Snape, the supposed headmaster, and Voldemort's most trusted lieutenant, found himself summoned to the Shrieking Shack. This was not a call for strategy or a sharing of secrets. This was the Dark Lord's final, brutal act of misplaced power. For Snape, it was the destined end of his agonizing, double-faced existence, a climax born from Voldemort's insatiable quest for ultimate dominion. Lord Voldemort, increasingly desperate and paranoid as the battle turned against him, believed he had finally uncovered the true master of the Elder Wand. He had meticulously traced its allegiance through history, from Dumbledore to Snape, convinced that by murdering Snape, he would finally claim the wand's full, unrivaled power. This belief, born of Voldemort's fundamental misunderstanding of love and sacrifice, was a fatal miscalculation, both for him and, tragically, for Snape. Snape arrived in the shack, likely with a grim understanding of what awaited him. He had known for years that his life was forfeit, that his path would almost certainly end in death at the hands of Voldemort if his true allegiance was ever discovered. Or perhaps even if it wasn't, as in this very scenario, there was no defiance in his demeanor, no attempt to bargain or plead. He accepted his fate with a weary resignation, a man who had long anticipated this final moment of sacrifice. Voldemort, cold and utterly devoid of mercy, did not strike the killing curse himself. Instead, with chilling theatricality, he unleashed his monstrous familiar, Nagini, upon Snape. The giant serpent, an extension of Voldemort's own soul and a creature of pure venomous instinct, lunged. Its fangs, dripping with lethal poison, bit deep into Snape's neck, a brutal, visceral attack that bypassed any magical defense and ensured a swift, agonizing death. The choice of Nagini for the kill was significant. It was a testament to Voldemort's utter disregard for Snape's years of service, and a grotesque symbol of the Dark Lord's inhumanity. As Snape collapsed, bleeding profusely, his life rapidly ebbing away, Harry Potter, Hermione Granger, and Ron Weasley burst into the shack. They witnessed the horrific scene, their hatred for Snape momentarily overshadowed by the shock of his gruesome demise. Snape, in his final moments, saw Harry, the boy with Lily's eyes, the living embodiment of his life's singular purpose. With his last agonizing breaths, Snape's priority was not self-preservation, but the completion of his mission. He had to deliver the truth, the crucial piece of the puzzle that only he possessed, to Harry. With the supreme effort of will, he clutched at Harry's robes, his gaze fixed on those familiar green eyes. His voice, raspy and choked with blood, uttered the desperate command, "Take them! Take them!" And from his eyes, as if his very soul was being poured out, came the glistening, silvery memories, his essence, his truth, his entire life's story, waiting to be understood. Harry instinctively understood the urgency, collecting the memories into a vial provided by Hermione. Snape's eyes, still fixed on Harry's, clouded over, losing their fierce intensity. His final, whispered word, barely audible, was a single profound utterance. "Look at me." He wanted Harry to see him, truly see him, in those last seconds. To absorb the truth reflected in Lily's eyes, the eyes that had always held his unwavering devotion. Then, with a shudder, he was gone. Snape's death was not a glorious battle, but a brutal, undignified end, fitting for a man who had lived in the shadows and accepted the role of villain. It was the tragic, lonely death of a spy, betrayed by the master he fooled, and unmourned by the side he secretly served. There was no farewell, no moment of reconciliation with Harry or anyone else who had hated him. He died in a pool of his own blood, having accomplished his ultimate mission, delivering the truth that would lead to Voldemort's downfall. This last stand was not a confrontation of wands, but an act of supreme self-sacrifice and an ultimate test of his lifelong devotion. Nagini's attack signified the end of Snape's penance, the brutal payment for his fatal flaw. He died as he lived, misunderstood, alone, and in the service of a love that demanded everything, right up to his very last breath. His final moments, however, provided the key to unmasking his true allegiance, transforming his perceived betrayal into the ultimate act of loyalty, revealed only after his heart had ceased to beat. Legacy and redemption, the bravest man. Severus Snape's death in the Shrieking Shack, brutal and unceremonious, seemed, to the casual observer, to be the ignominious end of a treacherous villain. He died unmourned by the heroes, a perceived casualty of his own dark allegiances. Yet his final, desperate act, the delivery of his memories to Harry Potter would irrevocably shatter this perception, unearthing a truth so profound and heartbreaking that it would redefine his entire legacy and confirm his ultimate agonizing redemption. The revelation of Snape's memories transformed him, in Harry's eyes, from a hated tormentor to a figure of immense complexity and tragic heroism. Harry saw the full scope of Snape's lifelong love for Lily Evans, a love that never wavered despite her marriage to his rival and her death. This singular, enduring devotion became the lens through which all of Snape's actions were recontextualized. His initial fatal flaw, joining the Death Eaters, was now understood as a desperate, misguided attempt at belonging that he spent the rest of his life atoning for. His years as a double agent, once seen as mere duplicity, were revealed as an unimaginable burden of self-sacrifice. Harry finally grasped the immense psychological toll Snape must have endured, living a perpetual lie, hated by the very people he risked his life to protect. Every sneer, every cruel word, every unfair detention, every point deducted from Gryffindor, all were now understood as meticulously crafted elements of a mask, a performance so convincing that it fooled not only Voldemort, but also the entire wizarding world, including those he served. The truth behind Dumbledore's death was perhaps the most shocking and redemptive revelation. Harry learned that Snape had not murdered Dumbledore out of malice, but out of an agonizing pre-arranged pact, a mercy killing to fulfill Dumbledore's dying wish and preserve Snape's crucial cover. This single act, which condemned Snape to universal hatred, was, in reality, the ultimate demonstration of his unwavering loyalty to Dumbledore and the greater cause. He sacrificed his reputation, his peace of mind, and ultimately his life, knowing he would be reviled, for a clandestine plan that hinged on his perceived villainy. Snape's protection of Harry, often subtle and always without recognition, now shone through the memories. From deflecting dangerous spells to subtly guiding Harry towards the truth about the Horcruxes, Snape had been Harry's silent guardian, a tormented figure watching over the son of the woman he loved and the man he loathed. The revelation of his Patronus, the silver doe, identical to Lily's, was the final, irrefutable proof of his love, rendering all his bitterness and perceived malevolence moot in the face of such profound devotion. Harry, who had hated Snape more than almost anyone, was the first to fully understand the depth of his sacrifice. In a moment of profound realization, Harry himself would later declare, perhaps years later, to his own son, Albus Severus Potter, "Severus Snape was probably the bravest man I ever knew." This statement, coming from the boy who lived, the one who had seen Snape's true colors, cemented Snape's redemption. It wasn't a redemption born of public forgiveness or a hero's welcome, but a quiet personal vindication through the understanding of the one person who mattered most. Snape's legacy, therefore, is not simple. He remains a polarizing figure, his harsh methods and cruel words undeniable. But beneath the mask of malice, his unwavering commitment to Dumbledore's cause, born from a singular, enduring love, elevated him beyond his personal flaws. He was a man who embraced villainy to serve good, who walked through darkness for the faintest glimmer of light. His story is a testament to the idea that love, even a tormented and unrequited love, can be the most powerful force for good, capable of inspiring unimaginable sacrifice. His redemption lies not in a sudden change of character or a public apology, but in the truth of his actions, revealed posthumously, proving that even the most outwardly despicable individuals can harbor the deepest, most selfless loyalties. Snape's life was a tragedy, but his death and the memories he bequeathed secured his place not as a villain, but as the bravest man, a complex, flawed, but ultimately heroic figure whose silent sacrifices were indispensable to the defeat of Lord Voldemort and the salvation of the wizarding world. His legacy is etched not in monuments, but in the profound understanding of those who finally saw beyond the mask. Conclusion: the always loyal servant. We have journeyed through the desolate streets of Spinner's End, witnessed the agonizing choices made in the halls of Hogwarts, and ultimately uncovered the hidden truths behind the man everyone loved to hate. The story of Severus Snape is not a simple tale of good versus evil, but a deeply human saga of complexity, contradiction, and unwavering devotion. From his bitter beginnings as an unloved child to his final, brutal moments, Snape remained bound by one singular defining force: his profound, unrequited love for Lily Evans. His early life, marred by neglect and abuse, forged a deeply insecure and resentful individual. This raw pain, coupled with his fascination for magic, particularly the dark arts, tragically steered him towards the very forces that would ultimately threaten the one person he cherished. His fatal flaw, joining the Death Eaters, was a desperate grasp for power and belonging, a misguided attempt to overcome the feeling of being an outsider. It was a choice that nearly cost him everything, and one he would spend a lifetime atoning for. The pivotal turning point, the moment of his true change of heart, came with the prophecy. The realization that Lily was marked for death by the Dark Lord he served shattered his misguided allegiances. His desperate plea to Dumbledore, born of agonizing terror and pure, unadulterated love, sealed his fate as a double agent. From that moment forward, every action, every sneer, every act of apparent betrayal was a meticulously crafted layer of an impenetrable disguise, a mask of malice designed to protect his true mission. For years, he endured the unbearable burden of being a spy, living a lie within the heart of the enemy's camp. His role as potions master and head of Slytherin provided the perfect cover, allowing him to subtly protect students, gather vital intelligence, and watch over Harry Potter, the living embodiment of his love and his eternal penance. His infamous cruelty was not just a character flaw. It was a necessary performance, a shield against suspicion, and at times, a projection of his profound self-loathing and unresolved pain. The ultimate sacrifice came with the unbreakable vow and Dumbledore's death. Snape willingly destroyed his own reputation, accepted universal hatred, and committed the ultimate act of treachery to fulfill Dumbledore's dying wish and cement his position as Voldemort's most trusted servant. This act, misunderstood by all but a very few, was the pinnacle of his selfless, agonizing devotion to the greater good. He embraced the role of villain, knowing he would never be praised, never be understood, accepting his dark fate for the light he sought to protect. His final stand, brutally cut short by Nagini, allowed him to deliver the truth. The memories he poured into Harry's pensieve were the ultimate confession, a revelation that finally pulled back the curtain on his tortured existence. They unveiled a man driven by a love so fierce and unwavering that it compelled him to endure unimaginable personal cost, to sacrifice his entire life and reputation for the memory of the woman he loved. Severus Snape was not a perfect hero. He was flawed, bitter, cruel, and deeply tormented, but he was, as Harry Potter ultimately recognized, the bravest man he ever knew. His redemption was not a sudden conversion, but a lifelong act of penance, fueled by an unwavering devotion to Lily and by extension to Dumbledore's cause. He embraced a thankless, dangerous path, living in shadows, bearing the weight of universal condemnation, all for a future he would never see. His legacy is a powerful testament to the complexity of loyalty, the transformative power of love, and the often hidden nature of true heroism. Snape reminds us that goodness can exist in the darkest of places, that redemption can be found even after the most grievous mistakes, and that the most profound acts of bravery are sometimes performed in solitude, shrouded in secrets, by those who are hated and misunderstood. He was, until his very last breath, the always loyal servant, a man defined by a love that never died, securing victory from the shadows.